Alright, we're going to try to do this in like 5 minutes. So go ahead and name your project. Then go to data and set up a new on-device storage data source. We'll just call it checklist data. And we need a checklist name, checklist item, then an item value. And that last one, we're going to change it to true false. Alright, so we'll go over to our empty page, and the first thing we need to do is set up our data variable to bring in our checklist data. And I just like to call it the same thing that it's named. Alright, and we can actually order that to do it by name. Alright, so we should have a nice A to Z list of our checklists. So we'll get all this out of there, and we'll drop in our checklist, not checklist, but our icon list item. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that for the number of unique checklists there are. So to do that, we need to do a formula. And there's a function called unique by key. So if we pass in our checklist data, and then we tell it to make it unique by the checklist name, we should have a nice list of all of our checklists and not just duplicate values. So we'll save that, and we'll pick a nice new icon. And our primary label is going to be the item we're repeating is just going to be the name. And we can change this to something like view checklist. Alright, so this page is pretty much set up. Guess we could rename it to checklists. Alright, so we're going to go set up our new page for the checklist items. We'll delete that. So we're going to add a page parameter and then a data variable as well. So the parameter is going to be our checklist name. And then the data variable is going to be checklist data once again. But this time we're going to filter it to only show the items for the checklist that we want to see. So we'll go to filter condition. We're going to add a new condition and say only show the ones, let me go back here, that match our page parameter. Alright, and this is where we're going to do the checkbox field, and I don't like the way this looks, so I usually change it. You can go to style and go to edit, and I'm going to make this just bigger, and I'll make this gray. Alright, so now we can save that. And we're going to kind of do the same thing with this. We're going to loop over it, except now we don't need it to be unique. It should just be a list of all the items. Alright, and the label is going to be our checklist item. And the value is going to be our item value. Alright, and so if we click on that, what we want to happen, whenever the value changes, we want to update whatever item that is. So we're going to use update record. And for our ID, just data item and repeat, and the current ID. And then if we click on record, we want to update the item value. I had trouble trying to figure out what would work. I tried using like component and then like the value and all that stuff, but I ended up just using a formula to say if and then we'll go to currently repeated data items. The item value is true, then return false, otherwise return true. Usually you just have to like click in there once and that red goes away. So if when they click it the item is true, we're gonna set it as false. We're just basically doing the opposite. And if it's false, we're gonna set it true. All right. For the headline, let's change that to our page parameter checklist name. We'll save that. So we've got all the logic set up. Now we just need to set up the actually creating the data. So we'll go to the global canvas because we want this to happen before the user actually comes into anything and launches anything. But first we need to see, we're going to create it, but then we need to say, okay, well, we don't want to create it 50 times and have a bunch of repeats. So we're going to get a record of all the checklist data, or sorry, get a record collection. And then we're going to say, if the count of that collection is greater than 0, we don't do anything because the data's already been created. So we'll pass that in there, greater than 0. Alright, so if that's false, then we want to create a bunch of records. And there's probably a much better way to do this using a different backend, but if you just wanted to do it all in here, you can. Alright, so we'll do create road trip checklist item. So road trip checklist. Then our item, which some items you might bring on a road trip, food. We'll just do a few of these. Beer. Spare tire. All right. And then for our next checklist, we'll just keep going. We'll just call this a grocery checklist. Milk. Bread. Eggs. And I should have renamed all these. Just do that real quick. All right, so let's save that. So that should create all of our data. And let's go back to the checklist items. And I'm going to change this to like a 1 second delay. That should just fetch it a little bit quicker. You could do something like show the spinner, until it finds data or something, but just a quick example, so we're not going to worry about it. All right, so if we go to launch and open our offline checklist, hopefully we get some checklists. There we go. Oh. We need to configure the checklist page whenever you click on this to actually open the checklist items page. And we're going to pass in the current checklist name. All right, so let's refresh. So now we can click these and bread, eggs, and if I go back, go to road trip and say I've got the beer. So it keeps that. And if I launch it again, Still got it. A better way to do this would probably be to use something like Airtable and kind of manage all of your data there. And then you could also, if you set up the on-device storage the exact same as your Airtable, there's a step called replace client data source or something like that. We can look at it. Yeah, here we go. So this one, you could just, your client-side data source would be checklist data. And then what you could do is you could occasionally fetch records from, from Airtable or something and replace your on-device storage with the stuff from Airtable. That way it would still be available offline if you needed it. But if you don't need offline capability, you can actually just store all of it in Airtable and not have to worry about storing it on the device. But anyway, hope that was helpful. I assume it'll work on a phone. So if you have any questions, just let me know.